So Colby, you recently wrapped shooting a very fancy Netflix film with an actor that we love and respect on this podcast, and recently did Uncut Gems. So I was wondering if you had any good Sandler stories you wanted to throw.
The Sandman. When I first met him, which I thought was so funny, is he's like such a dad. You know, he has like he has several kids. And when we first met, he was like, "Oh, where'd you go to school?" And I was like, "Oh, NYU." And he's like, "Oh my God, NYU." Every time I'm with my girls in the city, I have to point out every other school that exists because they want to go to NYU. And I'm like, "Oh no, what about Fordham? Like that's a great school."
Columbia. You know, it's all the way up to
anything
one.
That's not that expensive.
Yeah, it's up to $80,000 a year. Did you know that?
It's insane. It's absolutely insane. You go into a solid $250,000 in debt to go to NYU at this point.
That's good. That's
good. And look where you end up. Look, you end up on a podcast.
Hooray!
So many possible worlds, but we got this one. So many possible worlds, but we got this one.
Welcome to the Worst of All Possible Worlds, the first and only podcast filled with NYU alums. I am the worst of all possible AJs.
I'm the worst of all possible Joshes, and I did not go to NYU. Don't get it twisted. Come on.
So Brian is out this week. He unfortunately was flying his balloon over Colorado and was shot down. He is currently in custody, and we are negotiating his safe release. But in the meantime, we have brought onto the podcast a very near and dear friend of the pod. He is a filmmaker and playwright who is the screenwriter behind the upcoming Netflix film Spaceman, starring Carey Mulligan, Paul Dano, and the great Adam Sandler, as we mentioned before. His short film Lead Follow can now be streamed on Director's Notes. Please welcome the great Colby Day. Hey, Colby!
The great. I get an honorific. I accept.
Yeah.
Yes,
that was a hell of an intro, AJ.
It really
Jeez.
is.
I wrote it with my fingers.
Great job.
So, Colby, I wanted, because this is a preview episode, I did want you to be able to talk a little bit about Lead Follow in this customary first half-hour chunk before we release it out into the world. So I watched it this morning before coming on. It's a beautiful, beautiful film.
Oh, what a sweetie. Thank you.
That's all about sort of the beginnings of a relationship that's told through dance and color and sound in just a very cool and visceral way. But
yeah, I wrote and directed this film as kind of like hey, writers can be directors too, or at least this writer can be a director too. You know, I'm a playwright originally, and it actually was a piece for theater long ago.
Oh, wow.
That I then adapted for film. Yeah, so it has dance. It's all one long take with dance and music. It's a very ambitious little short film.
Yeah.
But it had none of those things when it was a stage play. So it really was a matter of like, how do you most make it a movie rather than just people talking?
Well, I think that film is proof that writers can be directors, and I think the episodes that we're covering today proves that some writers shouldn't be directors because we're talking about the great works of Phil Lollar.
Quite the transition, AJ. Yes, we're back for yet another goddamn episode of Wit's Endless Summer, the ongoing sub-series of the Worst of All Possible Worlds, in which we recap episodes of the children's radio drama Adventures in Odyssey, produced by Focus on the Family.
Colby, you have no familiarity with this show before today. Is that correct?
Well, okay. So my introduction to Odyssey is you gentlemen, right? Like I came for the pop culture, and then I slowly
you
this is how they
stayed for
get
wit.
This is how they get you. They slowly slip into
Right. Well, and at
story.
the end of this episode, we're going to ask you to convert to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So, that's just part of the plan.
So I had no Odyssey knowledge whatsoever, and then was talking with friends. We have some neighbors down the road who we just met, and they were talking about being growing up evangelical.
Hell yeah.
And I was like, wait, do you know
Adventures in Odyssey?
Odyssey? And
it's like a secret handshake. Yeah.
They finished the sentence for me, right?
Yep,
Like I started like, oh my God, yes. It did feel like a weird secret handshake of like, oh, I know the stuff now.
Yeah. You're on the inside now.
It really does feel like you're being baptized into a completely different world. I guess literally in this case.
And but our entry point in these that we are covering also felt like a trial by fire, like deep dive in.
You were thrown into the deep end in a very real way.
We could have flipped it the other way around and done sort of the more fun episodes at the beginning and then did the hardcore ones later. But no, we like to keep it hardcore. Yeah. So you don't have experience with evangelical Christianity with any of that, but you do have experience with writing. So this first episode that we listened to, On Solid Ground, episode 210, was written by a man who has become a bit of a nemesis of this podcast, a man known as Phil Lollar.
He tends to write a lot of the comedy episodes that aren't very funny.
Okay.
In this first intro part, we have 2 Lollar episodes, and then in part 2, we have 2 McCusker episodes back to back. And I did wonder if
I have an opinion. Yeah.
Yeah.
You felt the difference, right?
How do you find Phil Lollar as a writer?
I really did. Phil's trying a lot of stuff. He's doing a lot of interesting. He's taking us interesting places. We're going all over the place.
Yeah,
I admire his chutzpah, but I felt really dropped in a way where, as an audience member, I was like, "Oh, I'm not really being taken care of. Where am I? What's happening?
I'm in danger."
Yeah, I really got dropped in. Yeah, and I was tickled by some jokes early on, but I was also like, where am I? What is happening?
Well, I'll tell you where you are. You're in Adventures in the Bible.
And now, Kids Radio presents Adventures in the Bible, the program that brings the Bible to life in your life. I'm John Avery Whitaker, and today's topic is foundations. What are they, and why are they important? Well, let's start off with a few callers.
Riveting.
Hello? You're on the air. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, we're talking about foundations. What do you think they are?
Aren't they those big farms down south?
No, I believe you're thinking of plantations.
Well, Colby's going to bat for the plantation joke, I see.
No, this is Adventures in the Bible on Kids Radio. There aren't any pepperoni pizzas here.
Then how about sausage?
No, I think you have the wrong number. Thanks for calling, though.
I mean, we were all jamming to the song,
Yeah,
like
that's true. The music in the show is pretty awesome. Yeah,
we were all grooving over here. Yeah, and then the talking started.
Right.
We get this intro section that you think the whole episode's going to be about foundations, but it takes such a hard left turn, and then we're in Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, I mean, Eugene and Connie call in, and they're like, "Well, Eugene's like, I think a foundation is this." And Connie's like, well, I think a foundation is that.
I like the call-in format. It like worked for me, kind of. It took me by surprise, but then I honestly wrote a note to myself. It was like, this is funny to me. Like I was enjoying it.
It's particularly funny because, Eugene and Connie work for Wit. And they're the only ones calling into his call-in show.
It's good. It's a silly idea. It's a nice little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's abandoned entirely because we go to a breaking news bulletin.
Oh, yeah, baby.
In the past?
Crisis in the Middle East. This is Brink Chetley in the Kids Radio Old Testament Action Newsroom with a rapidly developing story in the 21st century BC. Moments ago, we learned that 2 large bands of nomadic Bedouins are on the verge of a major riot.
This is a news update from the past.
Charles Edward Thompson
is standing by live. This is the most kind of intense
Charles,
news update.
What's the situation now?
Well, Brink, I'm here in the Middle East in the year 2091 BC. And as you
can
see,
sending these kids to the front lines?
I'm going to try to see what the ruckus is all about. Excuse me, sir, what is your name?
I am Nabor, chief shepherd to the house of Nabor.
Accents are troubling to me.
Oh, yeah. Boy. Yeah, those are all white people.
It's very disorienting. And I listened again today because I was like, was it late at night? Like, did I just not?
Did I miss something?
Yeah, right. It so quickly was like, here's the format is, people are calling in. And I was like, no. Actually, we're in the past. It's breaking news. Actually, it's the kids reporting. And I just was like, where am I in space and time right now? Yeah, right. I just was like, oh God, this is so dense and I don't understand it. I'm way behind. And I know these stories. Like I'm not
right.
unaware.
Well, that was going to be my question. Like, how well are, because there was a lot of stuff in here that I actually never clocked about Sodom and Gomorrah. Like, I know like the big fireworks like ending of it, but like the lead up to it and all the setup, I had no idea, and it just felt like a lot of information. But is this a story that you're familiar with?
No,
Colby, like the whole thing?
I think it's it's one of those stories where like you kind of everyone knows the ending. It's like it's like a Titanic story or something. It's like sure. The cities.
Well, a lot of people think Titanic was fake too. So like it's
hold on.
What? There was a thing. There was a thing on Twitter a couple years back where a bunch of kids were like, "Wait, Titanic actually happened?" And it was like they just thought it was a James Cameron movie.
Whoa!
Sweet.
Did Avatar happen?
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, yes. And this thing sort of plays out very haphazardly, and I think it does rely, in a way that a lot of Odyssey episodes don't necessarily, it relies a lot on your knowledge of the Sodom and Gomorrah stories. It relies...
Yeah.
That's where I got really confused, because I kind of know the gist of the Sodom and Gomorrah story, but once you get into the details of like Abram was named Abram and then he changed his this stuff, I'm like, I don't know any of this. Like, who am I following?
It's also not really germane to the story. Like, these are just additional details. And in a way, this kind of reminded me of that fucking Paul Revere episode that we listened to a while back.
Yeah,
where it just gets so lost in the sauce on all the details that it's like, what are we even doing here? Where's the momentum? The problem with the Bible as written, I'm going to do some criticism of the Bible now.
Okay.
It doesn't always keep the narrative at the forefront. There's a lot of details that are just kind of there.
You know what? This does capture the feeling of a lot of the Bible, though.
That is true. That is true, right?
So-and-so begat so-and-so, and so-and-so begat so-and-so for 3 chapters.
So is it a good adaptation of the Bible? I would argue probably, but does that make it very listenable?
It's sort of dramatically inert, but yes, it's good adaptation. It's truthful.
I took the note, this episode is fucking jazz at one point, just because it just kept like switching styles and formats in a way that actually I felt very experimental for Phil Lollar, who is mostly much more traditionally structured than this.
The problem is it's not as if each of these additional sort of scenes or dialogues or whatever add new information. Instead, what he does is he just hits you with the same information over and over and over again from different angles. Abram and Lot, they split up to travel into different directions because their 2 clans are divided or whatever. And we've already heard...
Is there, do they say what they're just divided, right?
I think they're just divided. I think it's just like a Bible thing.
Look, it's Deus Ex logic. Mankind's been divided, and they have to go to their separate camps.
Okay. And then there's going to be a human revolution after that.
Yeah, actually,
in the form of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Colby, we're getting you. I'm seeing you. I'm seeing you slowly turn towards the Lord.
Yeah, I'm turning.
Good. We already know though that like it's fucking Abraham. It's the biblical patriarch, but we still have to get this fucking interview with him. And then we hear about the promise that was made.
Sir, you just gave away what looks to be the best land in the area, and you seem to have put yourself in a pretty bad position. Why would you do such a thing?
The Lord will provide for us. His promises are true.
Promises? Can you elaborate?
The Lord spoke to me and told me to look in every direction as far as I could see. And all the land that I beheld he would give to me and my descendants forever.
How many descendants do you have?
I have none. If
0.
you would excuse me.
Well, there you have it. Abram believes in the Lord.
There you have it.
There you have it.
It's such a weird Monday quarterback interview too, like post game.
Yeah, it's like, well, we went out there, we played really hard, we threw the football, and we caught it.
You could have gone towards the touchdown, but you didn't. Why not? Oh well, God said I could go the other way too.
Right. It's deeply weird, and it's deeply it's actually a little unsettling how much like Abram doesn't really want to be interviewed for this thing. Like it feels like he's being held hostage by this child.
Like a quarterback who just lost the game. It's the same dynamic.
Yeah, but it's like it's also just like there's so much information here, and I just wish that it were delivered faster. Like it's not necessarily that I want less of it. It's just that we gotta speed the pace of this thing up.
I need more of it. Actually, that's like
okay.
I need more information as the non as the non-evangelical.
Right.
And he's just sort of reiterating what she's said in this way, where I'm just like, but please explain what is happening.
It's a volume versus density problem is the best way that I can put it in scientific terms. Is like there's like these big blocks of text, these big chunks that actually have very little in them. What I want instead is like well-written, dense chunks of text that give me the information that I need, rather than what happens here, which is Abram tells Lot, hey, I'm going to head off because God has promised me this land. Lucy interviews Abram, who says, hey, God promised me this land. And then Eugene and Connie come in as like subject matter experts and are like, yeah, God promised him that land.
That's what happened.
I will say that I almost had a stroke when it said Eugene Meltzner, expert on the Middle East. Well, you know, all the things that I think about Eugene, one of them is definitely Middle East expert.
This just reiterates everything we've heard again, because Phil Lollar cannot tell a story.
You are right that it is just like it's a repeated beat problem. If we're talking about dramatic structure.
Right.
It's like all of these things are like, okay, yeah, we get it. He promised him the land. But let's hear from someone else about whether or not the land was promised.
Right. It doesn't add, like if you want to do repeated beats, you have to add some sort of information as part of that process.
Yeah, it should be game. They should be on their game, you know, heightening.
Yeah, that would require Phil Lollar to understand stakes or comedy in any real way, which he just doesn't seem to. His one joke for this whole episode is that Eugene just keeps getting cut off. Like he keeps trying to explain things like, oh, we don't have time for that, Eugene. And then it's like, oh, and then that's it. Like, and then we move on.
I guess that's a joke. Yeah,
I guess. It's also the anchor's name is Brink, and I just think that's really sad that he had to give up his dream of soul skating in order to become a newscaster.
What's that a reference to?
The hit DCOM Brink.
Oh, right. I was thinking that he had to give up his dream of driving an armored truck, but I'm built different.
Yeah, that's true. So is Brink and his armored truck. Then we move on to Lot getting stolen, right?
Lot gets taken. Abram then mounts his men to defend him. There's like a we ride at dawn kind of thing.
Lot and his family have been taken.
Oh, no.
Then how?
No.
Cherdolimer and 4 other kings attacked with no warning. The kings of Sodom and Gomorrah and others tried to defend us, but we were overwhelmed. They've taken everything. Everyone!
Abram!
Is Gary Oldman there guessed it for a second?
Arm yourselves and gather together the best fighting men in the camp. We march in pursuit.
The order is march, Brink.
Thank you, Lucy. We'll check back with you later.
I just had to keep those
hope you don't
tags.
die, Lucy.
It's just, what is going on?
I don't know. Time is wild in this one because they keep checking in and it's just like, It's been 3 days and it's like, it has? It was been like 15 seconds in listening time. What are we doing? Like, who is the newsman in this? I start like extrapolating into the bigger questions.
AJ, come on.
He is, but like, if this is like a news broadcast that the kids are doing as part of their radio show,
right?
Then who is playing Brink in terms of like the wider Odyssey lore? Like who are any of these people?
Right.
Who
that they're interviewing?
Playing? Yeah.
Are they in the Imagination Station? Like
no. They're not in the Imagination Station. This is kid.
So
I need to clarify some lore here.
Yeah, let's clarify some lore. We got to catch Colby up.
I just realized I didn't do a good job of clarifying the lore around kids radio. So kids radio, whenever they want to do a play within a play, all of the kids in Odyssey, one of the things you can do at Wit's End is you can go up into this radio studio and there are shows that they broadcast on this radio station, which I guess Wit produces in his free time. Kids radio also serves, I think it's like sort of a public access kind of deal. There's one famous episode where a couple of kids are broadcasting color commentary on like baseball games. It's just kind of like whatever the kids want to do, they can broadcast on kids radio. But sometimes it's just like kids being like, I'm here at the baseball game. And other times it's these really elaborate set pieces like this. Again, the rules very, very inconsistent here.
Too elaborate also for radio, maybe. Like There's kidnappings. There's years going by. This is deep investigative journalism to cover the story. Actually,
I mean, do you think that they had to like fill in a lot of the backstory of Sodom and Gomorrah because they couldn't actually dwell on the story of Sodom and Gomorrah too much for it being like a kid's show?
Yes, actually, that makes so much sense to me because that, if you're talking about like what's the part everyone knows, like universally, it's the Sodom and Gomorrah part. It's not the like, and then we went there, like that's, you're starting the story too early.
Yeah. Right. It's like literally starting with in the beginning and then we get to Sodom and Gomorrah and it takes like 9 hours. Yeah.
Well, they also kind of like, they bring in some stuff from the Abraham story that's like parallel to this, but not really part of the story of Lot at all. Mm-hmm. Like, how Sarah, some of the angels, and these, of course, are the same angels who will then end up visiting Lot. They show up at Abraham and Sarah's house and they're like, yeah, you're going to have a kid. And the choices that the actor for Sarah is making here are
interesting.
Buck fucking
all
wild.
Of them at once. Yes.
Do you know who the 3 men are?
No, but they must be important because Abraham immediately got up and ran out to meet them. And it isn't easy to make a 100-year-old man run, let me tell you.
So he brought them back here?
Yes, and then prepared all that food for them. And
yeah,
now
she
they're
is.
just
She's more Italian than Jewish, isn't she?
Let's see if we can't hear what they're saying.
She's close to Mario.
Hear my promise. I will return to you at this time next year. Behold, Sarah, your wife, shall have a son.
Who is this guy?
Why do you laugh, Sarah?
It's the
I
nozzle.
told you. Abraham is 100 and I am 90.
First of all, there is the pact between my people, the Italians, and the Jewish people that we can play each other. So I understand the impulse, but also, I don't know, like read one book on accent work. I don't know. Like,
or
just,
don't. I don't know.
Or just speak normally because it was a completely different time. And like,
it's sort of like the 2 allowed accents still,
Right.
Like you could still get away with it. If you're one, you can do the other, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean that's the end of that list. But also, they do this thing. This episode in particular is very bad at making you understand who is talking at any given time because there are just so many characters. Like the guy who comes in who does very much sound like the Nozzle from Venture Brothers is an angel, but he might also be God, but he just kind of appears.
No, he's not. I mean, that's the thing. Like, no, he's an angel, but this makes it like
very godly though.
He makes it sound like God. It actually makes it a lot more confusing than it is in the source text, where it's like, and then God sent down a couple angels. Like that's it.
Yeah, I mean, God is the only character in the Odyssey universe that has access to reverb. Apart from Wit himself.
That's true. Let's hear it.
If I find within the city of Sodom 50 righteous people, I will pardon the whole place for their sake.
Oh, Lord, I have ventured to speak to you, even though I am nothing but ashes and dust. What if there are 40 there?
For the sake of 40, I will take no action.
And this is a very famous part, obviously, of this story.
Goes on for so long.
Which is also how it is in the Bible. This is famous. This is very similar to, like, this parallels the story of Jonah, right? Where he's wanting the city to be destroyed, whereas here Abraham wants the city to be saved, so long as he ends up negotiating God down to if you can find 10 righteous people. But, of course, the city fails the test.
I took the note here that God would just eventually get very exasperated. He's like, hey, what about like 20 people? I don't know. Yeah, sure. If you can find 20, that's fine too. Hey, God, what do you want? How about 10 people? Fine, fuck it. Find one good person. Just leave me alone.
If you play it more in line with how it's actually written in the source text, I think that's kind of exactly the thing. It's God being like, yeah, fuck it. Like, why not?
Yeah. Name one good guy there, and you got it.
Yeah. Right. New guy just dropped. It's the only good guy in Sodom.
But it's that thing, too, of where there is too much reverence. Like, it's this weird thing with all of these Bible episodes where they're simultaneously, like, pretty irreverent about everything except for God. And which makes sense, but, like, it then means that you can't really have fun with the main thing that anchors these stories.
Yeah, and I want to be very clear. Sodom and Gomorrah is a fucking wild ass Bible story.
Yeah.
Like
it's
it is
insane.
It's fire, it's brimstone, it's got pizzazz, it's got sex, it's got drugs, it's got rock and roll, and we mostly skip over that in favor of I don't know, Sarah calling Abraham her master.
Yeah.
Oh boy. You know, as you're describing it, it's maybe the best Bible story.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's got it all.
What's the Bible story that's like the Kill Bill one? Is that Ruth? I always forget. There's like a book of the Old Testament where it's like a revenge story where a woman like goes on like a killing spree, and I always forget. I think it's Ruth.
Yeah, you're talking about the story of Esther.
Oh, great. Talk about Esther. Thank you.
Yeah.
What happens in Ruth, Josh?
Ruth is a lady who has a boyfriend, and then
go on.
And then she gets married to another guy. That's Ruth.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Colby, I'm curious to hear though. You said like pretty metal story here, the story of Lot. What makes you say that?
Even in the production, Sodom and Gomorrah sound cool. Like they put in drums, they put it like it sounds kind of awesome. Everybody sounds like they're having fun, which is like the auditory version of sin, but
right.
Yeah. It sounds like a good time. I also am just very intrigued by a city where there are no righteous men. Like that's actually just like a good setup for like, what the heck is the city like? I want to hang out here and see what happens here.
How does it function? You know, if there isn't anyone who's on the level, like how do day-to-day activities happen?
And that's you want to talk about like fertile soil for great drama, like you were saying, like, but then that would involve having to like make a lot of shit up and have fun with it, which sometimes they're comfortable with doing on Odyssey, weirdly enough, especially in Imagination Station episodes.
Yeah, so in a lot of Imagination Station episodes, you know, frequent listeners will remember, they usually try and do like a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead syndrome, where they try and like tackle it from like an outsider. So like the person who is like the waiter at the Last Supper, right? Who owns the inn where the Last Supper happens. So you can kind of like have a backstage view of all these Bible stories.
That would be so good for Sodom and Gomorrah.
It would be amazing. Like, especially, I keep thinking about, I don't understand why this isn't an Imagination Station episode, because I imagine like the kids usually just get dropped off in the middle of goddamn nowhere.
Right.
So like one of the kids lands in Sodom, one lands in Gomorrah, and they're both like, we know what happens here. We have to get everyone out of here.
Right.
And then you're actually faced with like the dramatic stakes of like, how many people can you actually like evacuate the city to save, and are they worth saving? Is like, I think would be a cool moral conundrum for these kids. But instead, you know, we get a kid standing in the middle of Sodom saying,
Brink, this is Sodom. Colorful, loud, wicked, sin-filled. A festering pothole of riotous living.
I want that on a fucking t-shirt.
This is exactly the clip. It sounds cool. It sounds like a cool place to be.
It sounds like a fucking rip-roaring time. It sounds like you can carry margaritas down the streets. Like it sounds like a 24/7 party. Yeah.
So what you're saying is, in the famous words of Pet Shop Boys, that you would like to go to the Sodom and Gomorrah show.
I would. I very much would. I'd like to learn what Gomorrah is.
What?
Took me a second, but I like it.
Gomorrah. Yeah. Right. That's true.
I'd like to know too.
Yeah. It's a secret third thing. I think it's very interesting that in this episode, angels are sort of portrayed as like God's cops.
Mm-hmm.
They come down and like just dole out justice without any like real thought of like the ramifications of
Very much a cop move.
Yeah.
They sound like they're on Dragnet too. Like just vocally, they're doing a
oh my God, that's
60s
right.
cop show voice. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, but here's the thing about most of the references in Odyssey. They don't go past the 1960s, right? There's no point of reference beyond that. So of course it'd be Dragnet. Of course it would be.
Well, and then we have, of course, the famous scene where there's a homo attack on the House of Lot.
Open up the door, Lot!
What do you want, neighbors?
We saw you take two strangers into your house earlier. And you know the rules of our city. These men must meet with our approval. Bring them out.
Neighbors, friends. These men are tired. They've traveled a great distance and have taken shelter under my roof. I beg you, don't harm them. Leave them be.
Oh, you don't approve of our ways. You dare judge us, you immigrant. Out of our way and we'll treat you worse than a stranger.
Brink, the men are rushing the door. He grabbed a hold of Lot.
Charles,
But that's actually, because that's the thing. That's what the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is actually about, right?
Yes.
For all the Bible thumping that it's about the evils of homosexuality, it's actually about not turning away. Like, it's about hospitality. Mm-hmm. It's about not turning someone away just because they are an immigrant, which I was actually shocked to learn was in here.
My mind is blown. Yeah, because not knowing the story beyond the fact that like Sodom is then tied to the idea of sodomy and homosexuality. Yeah, the immigrant thing really took me by surprise in hearing this. I was like, wait, what? They're anti-immigrant in Sodom and Gomorrah?
Yeah, and that's actually the reason why God smites them down ultimately. And it is. I mean, it's the thing about most of the evangelical movement, right? They find the thing that they don't like and then use the Bible to justify their hatred of it, even though that's not necessarily the original teaching of the thing in the Bible in the first place.
Wow. Okay, so this is one of those stories that really it has been fully converted. You know, like the work has been done. Whereas I think there's a lot of the Bible that, as a non-practicing Christian, like I've read and you can reinterpret or see the like textual underpinnings of good and how that has been changed or altered, or like the viewpoint's different. But I truly had no concept that was true of the Sodom and Gomorrah story, that there was like another thing going on here.
There was a secret third thing. There was a Gomorrah to it all.
There was Gomorrah going on.
The problem with, the townsfolk in Sodom is not that they're, dudes having sex with dudes. It's that the moment that two visitors show up at this guy's house, they're like, hey, bring those dudes out. We're going to gang rape them. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Like, that's evil. That's wicked shit. But what's interesting too, obviously, is that this is a children's show. They can't make that explicit. And I think it's interesting how they definitely do allude to it a bit, where it's like, these men have to meet our approval. And I'm curious what you guys thought about that.
It's coded, it's saucy, and it's piratey. It's like there's a pirate quality to it.
Yeah, I took the note. Why is pirate Pete from Goof Troop pounding on the door to have sex with these angels? To be fair, angels are canonically very hot. So I feel like there is a sort of like, hey, you got some hot dudes in there. You want to?
But these angels are tired. They've got headaches. They're just not feeling it tonight.
Yeah, they are. They're also cops and are there to dish out some fire and fucking brimstone.
Well, I don't think it should be missed here, though, that like this is not merely, hey, bring them out and then we'll have a good time. This is a violation of personal of a personal body. Like they are saying, we are going to make your continued living in this town conditional on sacrificing the bodies of the people who you have brought in to our own carnal lusts, and we are going to defile these guys,
wow.
It's a messed up city.
It's fucked up. And but that's, again, to the point of like the thing that people miss about this story. That's the messed up thing. And I think it almost gets there, but not quite here, because again, they kind of can't.
Yeah, no, of course
there's a way to say they will have to be subject to us, or like there's a way to enslave them, right? Or like I think that language is possible here. Of like, these guys are to be here, you must be our subject and do what we do, not what the Lord demands.
We're going to force these guys to do whatever we want.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think that's undercut by the fact that earlier in the episode, Sarah does refer to Abraham as her master. So there already is that would be sort of like confusing terminology of like, the enslavement element.
Well, that's just Depeche Mode. Let's play master and servant.
I see. You know what? That's what this episode was missing, Josh. Depeche Mode, I think.
Do you see the bit that I'm going for here?
Yes. No, I do.
Great. I just need to play this next clip here.
What do you think, Connie? Will God destroy Sodom and Gomorrah?
Absolutely, Brink. When God says he's going to do something, he does it.
It's very, it's very silly. I like Connie's announcer voice here.
Yes.
It's very chill. Absolutely, Brink.
She's excited about it.
So the angels get yeeted back up into heaven.
They do.
And they send poor Charles Edward Thompson to walk with Lot and his family away from Sodom.
Wait, something's happening. The sky's turning black. A hot wind is kicked up. It's... Here it comes! Fire and sulfur from heaven! I can feel the heat at my back. Taste the sulfur in the air. Sodom and Gomorrah are being completely wiped out!
Run, kid!
Run!
Keep going!
Run home! Our friends! Our life is back there!
No, Milka! Don't turn! Don't look back!
That's pretty cool.
It's messed up.
Deeply upsetting, actually. Very deeply upsetting forward.
It's squelchy.
It's a cool effect they put on there, right?
Yeah. It is. Why did they make a kid watch a woman turn into a pillar of salt?
Also, how could he watch her if he hadn't turned back? Well, I guess if she was in front of him.
Well, maybe he had like an eclipse visor, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like the special glasses.
Right. Yeah. Or like the psychoscope from
glasses.
Prey 2017 as another example.
Yes.
Great reference.
Thanks. My only other note here is, Charles, right?
Yeah.
This kid...
He's in charge.
He is. He's also not really... He's not around for very long in Odyssey. The Odyssey
the trauma of watching a woman turn to salt.
True.
Screaming from this. Yeah.
This particular child voice actor just isn't very good.
No.
Yeah,
because then we get we get to the ending here where we learn the lesson that you have to obey.
I don't know about you, but I'm going to take a cue from Abraham and build my life on the rock, Jesus Christ.
You have to love Jesus like Abraham did?
There's a slight pause too in you have to build your life on the rock, Jesus Christ. And I got very excited about Dwayne Johnson.
You thought that something was going to be cooking in that moment?
Yeah, there's just enough of a dramatic pause where it was possible for a second.
In terms of this whole episode, it teaches you, it says that you shouldn't have friends, I think is one of the other weird, bizarre lessons.
Like, Lot focused too much on having friends. We should focus more on Jesus, like Abraham did.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris.
This kind of feels like an episode of Night Vale a little bit, where the whole format of that show is that it's it's a public news radio program. And then occasionally what they'll do is they'll start that and then it will cut away to like a different story that's happening. And then at the end, it'll come back and finish off the news broadcast, which works in Night Vale because usually when that happens, they're like, well, it's a slow news day today, so I'm just going to read like the crossword puzzle to you and we'll solve it together. And then it cuts away to something else. But this one, it seemed like Whit had like a whole thing planned for this foundation thing that like the episode could have been built on.
It doesn't pay off. Yeah, it's weird.
It doesn't do anything. We just come back and it's another pizza joke.
We also have this weird like double outro thing where he's like, and don't forget to listen to the next Adventures in the Bible. Goodbye. And then Chris is like, I'm glad that we just, it's like, what's going on? What is going on?
Too many frames. Too many framing devices.
Too many frames.
Hey there, you are listening to a preview of a premium episode of The Worst of All Possible Worlds. If you'd like to listen to the rest of this, head on over to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/worstofall. And you can listen to not only the rest of this episode, but our entire backlog of premium episodes, bonus episodes, and if you subscribe at the $10 tier, you will get an extra episode of the podcast every single month. Again, that is patreon.com/worstofall. Hope to see you there.